We will probably hear us come in. All right, we have a quorum, so let's get started. We'll open the meeting. And the first thing we're going to do is introductions and notices. So let's do introductions first. Let's start with the folks on Zoom.
Hi, I'm Amanda Moore. I'm a principal with Baker Tilly. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, actually, we're not hearing you. Angie, is there? We're not hearing the people on Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Why don't we do introductions for the folks that are here?
I can hear you all right.
Welcome, Commissioner Chang. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I know that's
Everyone, Chang.
There. I was just gonna say, I'm not sure if she's coming today. So just go ahead and grab your name plate.
It's here.
Do we have one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
right there.
They ordered something.
Uh.
No, what it is.
Okay.
Lee Randall, Dushan County Facilities Department and management member.
Patty Dare, starting Deschutes County Commissioner.
Darrell Parish, public member.
Elizabeth Pape, County Auditor.
Joe Healy, public member. Steve Dennison, county clerk.
County.
I'm Eric Crockett, County Administrator, also our interim chair and export director. Today I'm throwing. Whitney might do this.
Yeah. Short straw or a long one? Okay, good. Back to the back, anyone? Welcome, everyone. Okay, and now the Zoom folks, can you hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Online, I can hear you. I don't know if they can hear in the room.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we just continue on with the minutes? The minutes are next, so let's submit the minutes from the October 10th, 2025 meeting for approval. A motion in a second.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion in a second to approve the minutes, and they were amended. We got an amended copy by email yesterday. Any opposed? Any opposed? No, okay, motion carries. Lucky me, it's for another year. Okay, and I'll make the motion for vice chair for Joe Healy.
A second.
Well, second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, bud. Okay. The next item is the audit committee annual report. We haven't. Okay. I'm sorry. We're going to do the ACPR first. You know a lot about that one. That's a big one. So welcome, folks from Baker Tilly. Hear me?
So yeah, let's go back and check online again. We did introductions in the room. We didn't have audio here, so now we're just kind of resetting to see if we're all online.
Can you hear us now?
There we go.
We can't see the Zoom on the screen.
Okay.
She's the one that has multiple titles also, right?
Welcome, folks from
There we go.
Baker Tilly. We're ready.
Great. Amanda, I'll pull up the slides if you want to get us started.
Okay. And just to do a quick introduction, since we missed that part with the audio issue to begin with, I'm Amanda Moore. I'm a principal with Baker Tilly, responsible for overseeing the audit of Deschutes County and the related component units.
And I'm Kevin Muller-Lally. I'm a director with Baker Tilly, kind of the engagement lead, making sure that the team is meeting the needs of the counties and we're getting work done by deadlines. Share. Can everyone see the PowerPoint okay?
It doesn't look like it's in presentation mode.
Okay, there we go.
Question real quick from the room. So, welcome. Is this the first audit that you're doing for the county, or the second time now? That doesn't keep track, because I know that we've switched over the years and it's exciting. And thank you very much for doing this for us.
Was this your four, Amanda?
I think it's our fourth year. Yeah.
Why?
For some reason, yeah, I didn't keep track of who was doing it, but I mean, I really appreciate the work product every year. So,
And Kevin, it looks like it's showing your version of the rather than the. They were Moss Adams.
oh, change.
So we.
Kind of the same group. Yeah.
With
Okay.
Moss Adams, Kevin and
That's it.
Amanda also worked for Moss Adams. They were merged with.
So what are you seeing, Amanda?
It's like the desktop version versus like the full screen. So I
thought
think this
maybe
is.
I wasn't paying attention for a few years, but I'm okay. Good, thank you. So
You
congratulations
want
on
to
your
show
new
it
name.
instead? I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
I can get there.
Okay. How's that?
Yeah, that looks good.
Great. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started. We're here today to present the audit results for the June 30, 2025 audits. Let's see, I lost my other screen to move the slides forward. There we go. So here's our agenda. So we're going to go over our engagement team. We'll remind you of the services that we provide to the county under our audit contract. We'll talk a little bit about our significant audit areas, and then go through our audit opinions and reports. So these are essentially the conclusions of our audits. We'll go through some additional required communications under our auditing standards. There's some additional information that's important to share with you about the audit process. And then we'll conclude with some updated accounting standards. We won't go into a full accounting lesson, but just kind of know what's on the horizon. So here's a few pictures of your audit team. Your audit team has been consistent for the time that we've worked with the county. You've met Kevin and myself. Another person to mention is Ashley Austin. She's a principal that also works in our government practice. She is in our Portland location, and she is not otherwise involved in the engagement other than doing some review of the ACFR and our reports at the conclusion of the audit. She's what we consider to be an independent or kind of cold reviewer that isn't in all the details and can give some high level perspective on those items. And then Michaela Mell is our senior. So she's really your point person. She's probably who you do hear from the most. She makes sure that all of the staff on the team are continuing to get their work done and on time, of course, with direction from both myself and Kevin. But she's who is typically your point person. There's a lot of other members of the team that aren't on this slide, but this is essentially your core audit team. So this is the scope of the audit work that we performed. We audited the county's annual comprehensive financial report, or your ACFR. We'll refer to that a number of times for those of you that might not be familiar with that term. We'll refer to the ACFR, as well as your federal awards. So because you spend well over $750,000, soon to be $1 million in federal awards, you are subject to single audit each year, and we complete that audit. In addition to the county's ACFR audit, we also audit a number of your component units. We audit the 911 service district, as well as the countywide law enforcement district, your extension and 4-H service district, the road agency, and then the rural law enforcement district. So a lot of reports to issue as part of our audit process. So these are the services that we provide to those entities. I'll talk about them. They are a little bit different depending on the type of the entity. But for the county, we do audit those financial statements under 2 sets of auditing standards. We audit them under our generally accepted auditing standards. And additionally, because you do have that single audit over your federal awards, we audit the financial statements using governmental auditing standards. And what that means for you is that we do issue an additional audit report as part of our audit process over internal controls. Now, we'll mention this probably more than once, but that report is not expressing an opinion over the effectiveness of your internal controls. But if we had any findings related to your internal controls, we would include it in that report. The second point is really just related to the county's ACFR. So the county does submit their ACFR annually to the GFOA for the award for the GFOA Certificate of Excellence. And because of that, there's quite a few additional items included in the ACFR. Typically, if you look at the information in the introductory section and the statistical information, that information is not required under the accounting standards that you follow. However, to obtain that award, you do need to include that additional information. So we do review, we look at prior year comments that the GFOA may provide, as well as the disclosure checklist to make sure that you're including everything to continue to receive that award. Additionally, I'm a GFOA reviewer, so I volunteer some time to review a number of ACFRs as well for that award. So definitely review quite a few of those as part of that process. The third bullet point there is talking about the governmental auditing standards. I did mention that's the additional report that we follow. In addition to getting additional report, there are some guidelines that we have to follow internally. Essentially, that means that every single person that works on your audit team is responsible for complying with some additional CPE compliance related to governmental auditing. The fourth bullet point there is because you are an Oregon municipality, Oregon also likes to see a report over internal controls related to financial reporting, as well as compliance with a number of the Oregon revised statutes and Oregon administrative rules that you have to follow. So that area, typically we're testing a lot over your budget process and making sure you're adhering to those compliance requirements, as well as looking at how you invest your funds, or how you're utilizing your gas tax funding and procurement are probably the areas that we spend the most of our time in. The fifth bullet point there is related to your federal awards. We did audit 2 programs this year. I'm sure Kevin's going to touch on this, and you might hear this a couple times as well, but we have audited those programs. And however, due to the delay in the issuance of the compliance supplement, we will not be reporting on those today. And then the last bullet point there is our communications to those charged with governance. As I mentioned, our auditing standards do suggest a number of other items to communicate to you that are important about your audit report, as well as your financial statements and how the audit went. And so we'll go through those items today as well. And with that, I'm turning it over to Kevin. He gets to deliver the good news.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I think the audit results are good for the county and each of the other blended component units, all those districts. So in terms of the financial statements, they have all received unmodified opinions in the audit reports, or clean opinions, meaning that the financial statements are materially correct in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. So that's the highest level you can get. So great news there. In terms of the government auditing standards report, we have no findings to report. So that means there's no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls, and also no non-compliance to report with government auditing standards. So good results there. Oregon minimum audit standards report. We have no non-compliance for the county or those other separately issued district reports. That's something that's unusual. We often have an over expenditure to report with an entity, something like that, but they all received clean reports this year. In terms of the single audit, Amanda said we haven't issued those reports. That's because the OMB didn't get the compliance supplement out until the day before Thanksgiving. We were sitting in conferences in the summer where we were told that the compliance supplement was a day or two from being issued and never happened. So it just came out a few weeks ago, and really we're focused on getting all of our financial statement audits out, and then we'll turn back around and get the single audit done. The good news for the county is we did do most of the testing at the same time we were doing the financial statement, so I don't think it'll be too much of a lift. And we can definitely share that there's no findings we've identified to date, but we're not 100% done with our testing. So that's a reason why we don't have the report to issue today. What I want to cover next is the required audit communications that the standards say that those charged with governance in the case of the county's audit committee should hear. And the first thing is auditor's responsibilities. So we're required to perform the audits in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. All entities needed to incorporate two GASB pronouncements this year that were new. The first is GASB Statement 101 on compensated absences. The big new item here was that sick leave now needs to be considered in the compensated absences accrual. And the county did do that. And by implementing that new standard, their beginning net position decreased by 2.1 million in total. If I had I don't have the county's financial statements in front of me, but 2.1 million's a pretty small number. One could argue that they could have passed because it's not material, but they went through, they really did the full implementation. So hats off to them on that. And the other new standard is GASB Statement 102 related to certain constraints and concentrations in financial statements. In talking with management, they determined there's no significant constraints or concentrations where they really had an issue and needed to disclose that in the financial statements. So we think that they effectively implemented that accounting standard too. The next bullet I think is also great news. We identified no audit adjustments. So that means there was no material errors as a result of the audit where the county needed to adjust any of the financial statements in order to get that clean opinion. We also didn't have any proposed adjustments where we would have been comfortable if the county didn't adjust the financial statements, but that they would be big enough that we'd want to bring to your attention. So nothing even arose to that level. We're not aware with management consulting with other accountants during the engagement, and we didn't have any disagreements with management as we carried out the audit procedures. In terms of difficulties in performing the audit, usually don't have anything to report here, but one thing that was kind of an ongoing matter since last year's audit is we did have a bit of a difficulty in accessing Munis. So when we make audit selections, let's say we're testing capital assets and we want to see under all the underlying detail like invoices. The county does a great job putting all that, linking it to Munis. So we can select the accounting record. We can find all that information ourselves. The issue is The county has a number of firewall, as do our own laptops with Baker Tilly. And because of that, there was quite a bit of organizing, a lot of conversations that needed to be had. And at the end of the day, when we were doing our final audit procedures, whether we were at our own offices or on site at the county, we kind of still had issues getting to that information. So it wasn't the most efficient thing in the world, but I think we all want to have a debrief with management to talk about how we can just make that a more efficient process for next year's audit. And then on to the next slide, I think, is the new accounting standards for next year. I'm sure we'll talk to you when we go over next year's audit plan, but there's two GASB Statement 103 on financial reporting model improvements. This is where the GASB saw some, I think, some divergence in practice on how previous accounting standards are being implemented. So a big one is the management's discussion in an analysis, or MD&A. I don't think they're really pleased with how governments are doing the MD&A, and specifically a big piece there is letting readers know about the significant changes in their financial statements when they put the current year numbers side by side with the prior year. So they provided guidance on how that information should be communicated to the readers. I think the biggest piece in here is with the proprietary funds. So your enterprise funds, your internal service funds, now have specific guidance on what needs to be considered a non-operating revenue or expense. Basically, they've laid out the net definition for 5 types of non-operating revenue and expenses. And if something doesn't meet that definition, it needs to automatically be in operating revenues and expenses. They are adding a new category to non-operating, and that is something called subsidies. So I think that'll take some time for everyone to get their arms around what a subsidy exactly is, and we'll work with your team on that. Another new accounting standard is 104 on certain capital assets. I think there's been some inconsistencies in reporting there, just with all GASB reporting entities. There's been new standards like leases, subscription-based IT arrangements. Those are all thrown into capital assets. And I think the big capital asset note disclosure that shows the changes throughout the year, if you pull up one government to another, that footnote looks different. So I think the GASB is using this new standard so there's more consistency. Also, some entities have assets that are held for sale. You see that often with urban renewal agencies. The county doesn't really have that in their financial statements, but if you look at the city of Bend's financial statements, you'll see that there. And so this provides more guidance on how to classify those types of transactions. So I think that's what we want to touch on today with the new accounting pronouncements. But aside from that, just yeah, I want to celebrate the accomplishments of Robert and Jan and their team on being ready for the ACFR audit. That was issued generally when we had set out. And then I'll share that with those other districts. We'll be releasing those audit reports today. We got the final management representation letters signed today, and those will be issued today as well. And then, like I said, this is our 4th year doing the audit at the county. And I think really the tone at the top is really strong. We've seen a consistent level there. And when we ask for things, whether we're working with county finance or other departments, we see that everyone's really helpful on getting us information timely and seeing that our questions are answered. So really enjoy working with the county. Here's how you can contact Amanda or myself. And I think this is the end of our prepared slide deck. What questions do you have for us?
Just for Amanda, yeah. Yeah, you have anything to?
Yeah, they're great to work with. Auditors are really helpful and have lots of fun technical discussions. And hopefully we can get the Tyler ERP access figured out for next year's audit. But yeah, that is a back and forth with our IT amping up their security and then them obviously having good security as a public accounting firm. So just getting that worked out was really fun. And obviously it sounds like it's still a problem.
Good to know.
Well, just to add, thank you guys, thank you Amanda and Kevin. Thanks to the staff and management, doing such a fun job. It's really good news. Again, we appreciate the hard work. Anyone else?
No, it's just a heavy lift every year, Jana.
Great
Just-
job.
This is really, every year it's hard. I'm sure you guys have missed out on some beautiful fall weekends that we've had to get all this done. A great ACFR and then also the audit on top of it.
Yeah, we did invest in financial reporting tool, and so this was the first year we issued the book out of it. So feel free to open the book. It's really pretty.
Yeah, it is. I saw it.
And you can see it online too, but so that was exciting to finally get that implementation done, and then we should be able to start the financial statements a lot sooner than we have in the past with our old processes. I'm pretty excited. Like I don't have to wait for year end anymore. Whereas all the queries we had built in the old process, I had to wait till like June, July before I could even like start working on the financials. Whereas now I can like roll this book and start working on it and import like a draft file balance and working on it throughout the whole year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is helpful because if you know, I think like I'm working in 3 fiscal years all the time. And so being able to like work in it while we're actually in that fiscal year is helpful. You're like, oh yeah, Road told me this is happening. I'm gonna go ahead and add that to the MBNA versus being a year out. Being like, what year did that?
Well, that's really awesome, especially with that new standard coming out.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Excellent work. Thank you so much.
Just wanted to thank Jana and her team on the tremendous work. I know it's a lot of hours, sometimes after hours, weekends, but just the tremendous amount of staff support that goes in, and also the work in the departments. I know that probably the health department is most impacted because of the federal grant requirements. So just a tremendous amount of behind the scenes work. Also want to thank Baker Tilly for their audit.
Oh, I do have a question about this single audit timing. Since you just got the supplement not long ago, do you have timing on that?
Yeah, I think we should be able to issue in January. It's not due until March 31st. But like I said, given the work we've already done, I expect we'll issue by the end of January.
And I was on mute, but I was going to say the same thing.
So yeah, I want to say special thanks. We're receiving the final product with, no findings, but I know there's a lot that goes into that all year long. So thank you very much for, the finance group, but also just like Eric said, the organization staying organized enough to be able to make it flow well. Today's December 12th and, the goal to try to get it in a November meeting or a December meeting before the end of the year. So this worked out real well today though. So thank you very much for getting that done. But also, taking that look, keeping ourselves aligned with state and federal changes, the GASB items that might evolve over time and making sure we're looking at the numbers. Because we've seen that over the years too, where the way something's accounted for changes slightly every year too. Thank you.
Finally, thanks to Whitney, Eric, and Nick, who's not here. They're watching this. They had an active on as well, so thank you guys.
I have one request to GASB, so maybe staff can put it on.
Slow down.
You get a great audit and it's like, oh, this is an unmodified opinion. You're like, what does that mean? So could they change the name to make it sound better? This is a great accomplishment.
Gold
The
star.
auditing standards. You want to change that?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's my
gold
request.
star standard.
That's my request.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
You have the generally accepted auditing standards.
Yes.
Get them to change it.
The request is in.
the weekend.
Yes.
Anything else on the Aquifer? All right, we'll let you guys go. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
You.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Audit Committee Annual Report. And that is a report that the Audit Committee submits to the Board of Commissioners each year. Submitted to the website in December 2024. And what it is generally is a combination of statistical data, work that's been accomplished by the Internal Audit Office over the last 12 months. And I can go through that if you want, but it's in writing, it's here. So does anybody want to hear the stat data, or shall I just submit it for your consideration? You want to hear it?
Well, I'm gonna hear it twice, so whatever.
Okay.
Yes.
If you wanted to hit highlights. fine.
Okay, I'll flip through it real quick. The highlights are, well, one of the things good is the audit committee is fully staffed, fully in place. We've got 6 public members, 3 county members are with us. So we have no trouble filling the role that we have. As far as audits that were completed this year, there were 6, which is quite a bit of work considering we have one member on staff. We had 1.5 for a very brief period of time, but we lost that person to another position in the county, which is a good. So we had a language access program audit, sheriff transition audit, county fair rodeo alcohol sales audit, election controls integrity audit, body camera audit, and county courthouse expansion audit.
Those are the follow-ups. The green.
Okay.
It says
Let's
six.
see.
There's only 5.
So it's 5. 5, one in Hawkwood.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 5. And then there are also follow-ups to audits that were done previously. There are a host of those. Wage equity, equal pay analysis, custom developed software, city clerk's integrated audit, county legal integrated audit, RV park integrated audit, county courthouse expansion pre-construction management audit. We also had a tour of the courthouse last summer, which was nice. Health benefits program, language access program, and public health integrated audit. So we've been busy with new work and following up on existing work. And then as far as resolving findings, management resolved 35% of their recommendations, and they're in the process of doing 58%. So it takes time to move forward, especially some cases. And 7% of the recommendations are not being implemented for a host of different reasons. And at the end of 2024, 109 and 144 outstanding recommendations were completed, 35 remained outstanding, and there were 17 reports in total. Got some stat data on average hours. I'll just leave that for later. And that's it for the stat data. There's also a comment in the report about some additional discussion that went on between management and audit staff regarding completing work. We refer to it as pushback, I think. It was dialogue between staff and management staff and internal audit about access to certain information. So we noticed that this year more so than previous years, and I think it was a function of the audits. So you submitted that for your consideration as well. Any questions, comments, or?
Yeah, thank you very much. So, this letter is respectfully submitted, Daryl Parrish. And, it does say here, healthy dialogue, clarification are expected, encourage resistant Resistance to independent review can undermine the purpose of the audit process. And as I say, I sat down with audit committee members here. We do seem to have slight cultural disconnect, and I'm not sure what we're gonna do about it still, but I mean, well, yeah, I mean, what, as to say, what is your thought as the chair now with your experience? Any thoughts? I mean, because we did have our sit down, at our work session, and I don't know if everybody watched it or not, but it just feels like a disconnect still. And I want and support a healthy audit program. So, yeah, I mean, we're still kind of at a unsettled moment for some reason. But I mean, for you, Daryl, any thoughts?
Well, I think in a perfect world, obviously, the internal auditor would get everything they ask for as far as information. If there's some, I mean, try to figure out if there's a reason you can't provide it, come to some, final agreement as to why you can't, both sides. Maybe we've done that. I mean, we're moving on, hopefully, from the issue that we had in the clerk's office.
Well, so Commissioner Chang and I were sitting side by side, and he said, hey, maybe we need to look at the code, so I'm just referring to what we talked about. I'm not going to speak for you today. So, I mean, we're not settled from your governing body. I mean, if you saw the dynamics between the three of us at our meeting, we're not settled on there. And hope is not going to be this step here. And, that was a pretty strong letter you sent to us, challenging. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute here. We are a highly functioning professional organization, and we do choose to have an audit, and we have a disconnect. So let's just not think it's getting better without some action here somehow.
No, changing code is the action that would accomplish that. I don't think it would, my opinion. I don't think reducing the independency of the internal audit function will help with that. I don't think that's the right direction, but what is the right direction?
Is there a reason, like, I wasn't on the audit committee, and this is before Elizabeth too, we went in this direction. We went to the performance audit direction. We hired a Yellow Book performance auditor to move in that direction. I feel like that's part of the disconnect, because that is new, and that's a new direction that we went, and I think that's part of the disconnect. We went in a new direction with this new type of audit for the county. And change is always alarming in the difference in that audit versus what we had before. So if you can give us background on what was discussed as we switched.
One of the reports in the city county administrator. And that was done with everyone's concurrence. Everyone bought into that. Everyone thought that's a good idea at the time. And I still think it's good. That's my opinion.
So as I say, I mean, I want to go through this. I do not. I want professional on all sides here. So we can take it wherever we need to. Commissioner Chang was going to say something.
Yeah. The internal audit program can contribute to the functioning and the performance of the county in some really valuable ways. That is dependent upon operating within a set of healthy, functional expectations and relationships. And I think we are in a real strain point right now in terms of expectations and relationships. And I'm very open on how we address that, but the value of the audit office, the performance of the audit office's work is dependent upon healthy expectations and relationships all around. And so that's what I think we need to be working on. Rewriting the code is one proposal for how to do that, but I would like to hear other proposals if there are. I do want to say that many of the concerns that I have heard from the auditor are, we want the auditor to be able to do an important job. I've heard a lot of concerns that, I could boil down to, if you wanted to oversimplify that, I could boil down to, these are not optimal conditions to do the work. And I just want to say that this county is full of people who are doing important work, doing a great job under non-optimal conditions. And so I think it's reasonable to expect from the auditor a similar level of flexibility, innovativeness, creativity, to do an excellent job under non-optimal conditions. And I could rattle through a whole long list of, go department by department on, people who are doing their work under non-optimal conditions and still doing an amazing job. And you all are very familiar with those.
Like you to clarify what non-optimal conditions you're hearing from audit that audit is struggling with.
There's a feeling that the independence of your function is being impaired. And during our discussion last week or 2 weeks ago, I made some suggestions about, okay, you can ask a very important question, and there can be more than one way of independently answering that question that doesn't come through the internal auditor. For example, I suggested, if you need to know, if you need someone to independently evaluate something that the clerk is doing, if you need someone to independently evaluate what the sheriff's office is doing, it is possible to get people who are not the clerk, not employees of the clerk's office, not the sheriff, not employees of the sheriff's office, to provide that kind of an independent review. You can provide the methodology, but if they are, if those entities are saying, we do not feel that we can share this information with you, I think it's important to recognize that there are other people who could perform an independent review, who could address that, address the goal and the need.
I kind of take issue with you equating that with me operating under non-optimal conditions, because I think when you say that, you're implying like I want an extra budget, or I need people's attention when they're not giving me attention, and those those are the kinds of stresses that everyone in the county has a limited budget and deals with, and I would hope that you're not feeling like I'm asking for special treatment. Those other, those having out other reviews, as you're stating, like that would be great, but that's not an audit. And so it's not that I'm asking for special treatment or to, operate under non-optimal conditions. It's just outside of the function. So yeah, if Steve or the sheriff wants to get a review by another entity and report on that, those are great things, and they can tell you a lot, but those just aren't audits.
That's fine, as long as there isn't a report issued that says, that essentially could create the perception that one of our departments is trying to hide something about a very gravely serious, important, politically sensitive issue.
I conducted those audits because the audit committee instructed me where to audit, and I have to report on, follow through with my conclusions on the objective. And because I wasn't able to draw a conclusion on the objective, that's why I have to issue those statements.
A big red mark and this label, an impairment, right? That, people are withholding information from you. I think that's, I find that provocative and inflammatory. We are one county. We are trying to support each other in doing the best job that we can. The folks who, in these examples, these folks, they were trying to accomplish the goals of your audit. I mean, just you know, the words in this body cam audit, you know, that there are a number of important goals, enhancing public trust, promoting deputy safety, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that the sheriff's office cares about as well. And there are ways to independently review these things to meet the needs of the public. And so it's, you know, it may just be a matter of language, but, you know, classifying that as an impairment, you know, again, potentially, you know, giving the public the impression that someone is trying to hide something, is challenging and problematic.
Part of the standard, she does have to disclose the impairment. She is following the standard. So what I'm hearing is the suggestion of hiring outside consultants in these type of areas is
No,
what?
Those specific examples, what I said was, you know, actually, you know, if law enforcement people are saying we can only show this information to law enforcement people, you could get other law enforcement people outside of the sheriff's office to review it for you.
What they said, we can't do this kind of review. We can't do just a general broad look. We can only do a look related to a specific criminal claim.
For law enforcement purposes.
That they said law enforcement is defined as looking at a specific criminal incident. That was what they said.
Well, I don't know if anyone asked them whether they would allow other law enforcement officers from outside to take a look. I mean,
What they meant by law enforcement purpose, they, you know, gave a very general response and said they wouldn't provide more information.
like page 7 of this report, sheriff's office staff said that. No, that's not. I was looking for it. There was a staff proposed working with the auditor to develop a checklist sheriff's office staff could use to review a sample of footage and report results to the auditor without permitting access to the actual footage. So if they were offering a methodology and access to their own officers, you might be able to get them to provide.
I agree that there's inconsistency in their logic and that argument doesn't make sense.
You're talking about the letter, you know, the kind of the specific scope and intent. I'm talking about the goal, the purpose, and other ways of accomplishing it. The goal is to check for certain things through an independent review. I am suggesting other ways that you could accomplish an independent review.
An outside agency do a review. It just, I can't sign off on it according to my audit.
So this is the catch-22 we're in. I mean, you know, and you're supporting this aggressively or enthusiastically, I don't know how to terms, but but it's been stated, yeah, the audit committee is going in a different direction. And I was like, oh, I didn't know this. You know, all of a sudden we're in this spot where it's like, oh, you know, department heads and people that are being audited are saying, hey, this is very different. What's going on here? I don't know how to explain this. You know, we choose to do audit at Deschutes County. I mean, I've learned a lot. Oh yeah, this is yellow book standard performance audits, and you guys haven't been doing this, and you need to do this. And if you don't do it, why aren't you doing it? It's like, whoa. And I'm not putting words in your, I'm saying this is what happens in my head here. And this is what I'm feeling. I'm not critiquing you specifically.
I just wanted to let you know, this is something we've been doing for 20 years. So there's not anything new. Maybe Kristen misunderstood as well that we started doing performance audits when I started, and that isn't true. David had always done performance audits. He'd always looked at sheriff's office. He did one of the very first audits he did was of the evidence room, looking at evidence, like the law enforcement materials. So this isn't a new thing.
Well, yeah, so, and I figured that out early on too. I don't think it is much different.
And something about the expectations and the relationships was different at that time. And people were comfortable providing David access to information that maybe they
well,
are more uncomfortable providing you with access to.
and as I say, and I've been side by side with you. So Elizabeth specifically, I've been side by side. I kicked off this audit report with the sheriff's office for the body cameras very specifically because I was like, oh, this is getting interesting. I want to get, understand what's going on here. So, I mean, I'm not taking a side either way. I've always said we need a strong, healthy audit program, and we want the organization to be willing and accepting to do it so we can optimize ourselves. So, yeah, I mean, it's still hanging, whatever it is.
If staff could use leadership from you and support to say, "Okay, she is doing what she's always done. She's following the guidelines we've given her.
Yeah.
She has all of these policies and procedures in place. She's committed to protecting information. And yes, please cooperate with her because it's something our county.
I feel bad that we're talking to you directly on this. That's why I was trying to talk to the board here, because we need to work this out. This is an audit committee that has the authority to give the auditor, the priority of the next audit. But we also have an organization that we kind of just lost confidence, right? And I'm ready to take that leadership step when it's the right thing to do. That's why we're talking about it today. I'm not discounting it.
Accountable transparency.
Well, so I was on the audit committee for 8 years and got relationships with the audit committee members and enjoyed the lunches and have learned about the ACFR and enjoyed kind of thinking through, okay, what was just audited and what does it mean? And it's just different all of a sudden. And maybe it is just that one time that a 20-year auditor that was here from the beginning of the program is handed off. And this is the bumpy road that we have to go through, which is fine. I mean, if that's where we're at, let's just, find the smooth road and then go down that path. So I'm not even critiquing like that, but I don't want it to fester either. And I'm asking for the other audit committee members to be involved in this discussion because poor Elizabeth, it's their job and she keeps defending herself. So
I guess I'm a little bit, when you said that previous auditor would get information that they asked for, but this auditor wouldn't get the same information. That's what I heard.
I don't know if it's the same information or whether the prior auditor adjusted to the constraints that
Right.
departments operate under
And I don't know if
and
there's-
asked different things.
When the scope of the audit is initially done, if there's going to be these legal requirements, that questions that need to be asked, if that can be done prior to the final scope. And I'm just talking it, so some of these things can be eliminated from the beginning and adjusted from expectations of what can and cannot be done during the audit from the legal side, and have the county attorney or whomever is available to kind of find the path forward so both sides are clear going in.
Yeah, okay, so let's rewind, for example, this body cam audit. How would we do that? And what will we do differently than we did in this case? Because, to your point, I mean, it ultimately, bottom line, it was county legal counsel who said, the sheriff's office does not need to share this data. So
It speaks to that. It speaks to the evolution and how it happened. So when we started the audit, we were in conversations, and so we were talking like, oh, okay, well, let's ask these questions, and the audit moved on as the conversations were taking place. So it was at the end of the audit that we had to have that finally we got word that they weren't going to share it. But all along throughout the audit, we were talking and indications like, we'll see. And the sheriff's office, and they are here unfortunately, but I spoke to them about this, and they were, when we closed up the audit, they were like, yeah, we completely understand why you included that. Because I had a direction from the audit committee to go and audit the body camera program. I mean, it's really hard to audit the body camera program without actually looking at the footage. And they understood that, and they understood why this scope impairment was there, because how can you draw a conclusion about it without that one big thing? And so I don't think the sheriff's office did not have a problem with this inclusion.
Well, in
Oh.
their reply at the end of this audit, they made no mention of that. So I don't know what they think, one way or the other, based on this response. I do know what I do know what I heard from some staff from the sheriff's office about the discussions about the body cam data. And so that's what I'm operating from.
It might show up in the follow.
I'm not gonna follow up on this. I would only follow up on the-
And you still.
Well, yeah, so I don't know that there's resolution here today, but I mean,
if I could rewind, there was a suggestion that we modify the process of developing the scope and it kind of whoever approves it to move it forward. And I think that that's an interesting proposal. And that could be part of what we address in a code revision.
I think we should go before then. We set an audit plan. This was on there.
It was, we talked about it, so I don't know, before when we said like the
When-
body cameras.
And it's not, I mean, it's public, and maybe when we set the audit plan, we need to know where some of these issues are beforehand, so we can talk about.
well,
So go before, because she gets the list from us, and it's over time, like she goes through this, it's over a period of years. So we know she's going to go in these areas, so if these sensitive areas or where we might have some conflict, we kind of know ahead of time, they're in the list. I mean, I think Daryl's right about not changing the code. You can start with our work plan, and if we're seeing something, we can start ahead of time. So whether it's, we need help from one of you to come in and talk about it, or if we need to get a legal opinion of how data should be shared, we have this work plan, and that's the very beginning. That's before we're into the audit. It's really hard to get into the audit, set the objectives, and then halfway through, oh, you can't access this data. And that's where she's already in, and then we're having the disclosure of scope impairments. If we start with the audit plan, which is a normal process that we do, and try to tease out those things ahead of time, I think that's be maybe a start to the solution, because you're seeing where we're going and what we've suggested where she should go, and department heads can see that. It'll be in a packet or 2 or 3 or even 4. I think that's a better time to do it. But when we start an audit, when we go in, it's kind of the hard, it is. And these disclosures, she is following her standard with these disclosures. They are, it's not that she's trying to say, oh, they didn't share with me. It's she has to, because she's already in the process. She started it. So
Yeah. she has
Yeah.
to meet standards.
yeah. So I think instead of, I don't think the code is the answer, but if we get to the very start and we know where these spots are, so we can help navigate it better, I think that's a starting point to try from.
I think along those lines, one thing we discussed as part of the annual plan last year was that some of the suggested audits hadn't necessarily, as I recall, been discussed with the subject departments or offices of the audit. And I think that may be an area to go along with what you're saying, Kristen, that could be added, is that there be a lengthier discussion leading up to a proposed audit being brought as part of an annual work plan, developing the scope of the audit, what that might entail, in conversation with either the elected department head of the office or a department head, so that it's more fleshed out. And when it comes to the committee is aware that, that some of that background work has been done, and having bridged both going back 8 or 9 years with the previous auditor and now, my impression is, having been through audits previously, is that some of that may have happened kind of more in depth prior to those coming to the committee as a proposed audit.
One of the things that comes to mind is the security elections report. And I'm gonna jump around here, but I was just thinking, what does it relate to me? You know, when you buy something, a product like a rubber tire for your car that you drive 50,000 miles on, it's amazing that that thing does that. And it's amazing that the selection system, you know, gets across the country, gets so many people's votes in. It's certified by somebody else is kind of my point here. And he was drawing that line. And then you said, oh, it's a scope impairment because I wanted to go look under the hood. And that could have been talked out right before that happened. It's like, oh no, this is a state and nationally certified vendor system, and many layers to that. So that, and then instead of starting off with scope impairment, it says the definition of this system is, this is what we can see, the output of this system. Every individual puts their vote in, and we're not going to be looking under the hood of this. I mean, it could have been done up front. It's kind of that same concept a little bit.
Or we could have done a different audit. If it
Well,
wasn't like,
yeah.
if something would be worth.
Yeah,
our
anything
time.
around it. Yeah, yeah.
Talk about that. Could be controversial, it could be hard to do.
Yeah, if there's different things we could change, if we know how to, we could put resources to something else we knew beforehand.
I wouldn't,
I mean-
sorry, just to chime in on, I mean, a lot of reference to this audit that I was a part of. Again, that didn't come from the committee, that didn't come from the auditor. I suggested that, hey, come audit us. We want to be transparent about what we do. But oh, by the way, there is our ballot security plan that is not subject to disclosure, debate that. But it is submitted timely and approved by the Secretary of State's office. So that goes back to kind of the tone that I was referring to before. Those words could have been added to the audit. It could have said scope impairment, but this was reviewed by another entity and approved. Something like that. That's the tone. And that could have been done as part of this audit.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there isn't growth in that,
Mhm.
but again, I think some things, if we know ahead of time, or we can get legal language around it, or decide to put our resources somewhere else.
Agree.
So we could practice with a homeless audit or something is coming. I feel like that's gonna be a minefield in its own, unless you really define, you know, okay, this $100 was intended for this purpose and it went there. Because after that, oh boy. But I mean, that's being proposed, right? Yeah.
I do like the idea that, you know, something very early in the process, whether before it's put in the audit plan or at the beginning when it's put in the audit plan, that there's departmental check-in. And you know, particularly for very politically sensitive topics. I mean, you know, the two that we're talking about here, you know, collection and use of body cam footage, election security. I mean, these are powder keg political topics in our society, in our community, and they need to be handled with great sensitivity. And you know, I guess I want to just reemphasize that, you know, what I'm concerned about is a report that comes out that puts questions in people's minds. It's
But
like,
they already had those questions. And I mean, honestly, Elizabeth is following her regs. And I feel like you know, we're not always going to get the answer that we want, but it's already out there. So people want those things answered.
they give legitimacy to sometimes illegitimate concerns. I mean,
I could have done the audit work and drawn a conclusion and drawn a finding related to those. I think I looked at other areas of the election where people also had questions and doubts about, and found like, no, it looks good. So I think letting the auditor do their work adds to the legitimacy.
If if there's a particular area where there's concern, and you add to the concern because you don't want to make room for people to trust an independent review through another channel, then I don't think it adds to.
People can look at independent reviews through other channels. But I can't weigh in on that. That my guidelines are to look at the evidence that I see and draw conclusions based on the evidence that I see. I don't see evidence, I can't draw conclusions.
Well, then maybe it goes back again to the audit committee identifying early on an area of legal or political complexity where you're not going to be able to implement the scope. So maybe there's things that instead of in keeping something in a scope and then kind of identifying this scope impairment that leads to public uncertainty and questions, you just say there are other ways to address this question that are outside of the scope of this audit.
Apologies for being late. Have we talked about the committee that we set up to, okay, so we formed a committee to have audit committee, subcommittee members meet with department heads, invite department heads to voice concerns. And so that's something that we've done. We haven't met with the department heads yet, but that committee has been established and could be an opportunity to have the kind of interface that you're talking about.
So, as I say, I want an auditor to be empowered to be the best darn auditor there can be. I've never, doubted that. And this is a discussion between the governing body and our audit committee. You're appointed members by this governing body, and we want to do good for an organization that's, a highly functioning professional organization. And we have had, history too. We've had Sheriff Captain go to jail and
To prison.
but
Yeah.
and the sheriff, yeah.
County actually.
So we do have stuff that happens here too.
No, the county ignored it. They actually had to go out, per my conversations with people that know, they had to go out to the FBI and get that taken care of. So.
And then,
Yeah.
but
It's why we have an audit function.
Yep.
And the idea that we want to catch waste, fraud, and abuse, I take that very seriously, and I am very appreciative that the audit committee is working on those things.
Catch and deter.
Deter.
there you go.
And the fact that I heard the story, someone just was at our transfer station and got a special price and didn't get a receipt. So when I know those kind of things are still happening out there, and I was just, thinking about my airport, I gave them cash and they said, "Do you want a receipt?" And I said, "No," but I'm thinking, how do they, how are they sure that all their money is actually being properly recorded?
Understood, but that's the foundation of this. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, come on now, look at how many crazy emails I'm personally getting in today's world with the spam and everything that's coming from everyone trying to, fish. And my niece just got hacked for $4,000 through her Venmo account. So, there's a lot of outside forces that are coming, and having Elizabeth doing what she's doing, I think is critical.
And I support it. So as I say, I mean, this has been a good discussion. Sounds like there's a little sensitivity to, hey, what is politically hot? What's because I don't want to put a definition around how a professional certified audit happens. That doesn't make sense. I agree with that. But we just have a little bit of a cultural disconnect.
So who's on that committee, Steve?
Joe, Daryl, and me.
Okay, good.
Well, I think it's a good one.
I'm sorry.
I don't hear any opposition to engaging the departments early on, once we put the audit plan together, having them have an upfront discussion about what we're gonna do, what their concerns are.
Well,
That's a good idea.
and if there's that moment that a department head or an elected official says, you know, I'm not gonna let you open up that door, and it just doesn't feel right, that's the moment. But
Actually, I'm gonna disagree and push back a little bit on that because access to information is really important to auditing. And the office should not be going to the sort of the path of least resistance. We shouldn't be guided.
and I don't
towards
think I was saying that at all. You're responding to something I don't think I was saying.
saying that if it-
So now you're telling me what I was saying, that,
I believe this is what you're saying. Is this correct? If a department head is resistant to sharing information, then we shouldn't audit in that area.
oh, no, I was saying the other side. I want you to be Columbo. I want you to say one more question, ma'am. And then, you know, follow up again. Hey, that didn't add up. One more question and not stop until we get to the end of it. But there may be political and layers of reasons that are reasonable that we don't go down some path. So no, I'm not challenging you on that at all.
At that moment, if a department head says, you know, I really can't share that with you for X
Yeah.
reasons, that would be an appropriate moment to engage the Board of Commissioners. You know,
All the media. In fact, that's what I figured out.
Engage legal counsel.
When
And say, well, yeah, like let's discuss this barrier, and if it's
Council, well, on both issues. And so when I engaged legal counsel on the elections audit, they said, we don't have an opinion. We're not going to weigh in on this. When I engaged legal counsel on the sheriff's office, it took them a while. And then finally at the very end, that's when, yeah.
And what I said first was engage the commissioners. I mean, when you get to that sticky moment, I think that is an appropriate moment to engage the commissioners. I mean, I do not sit on the audit committee right now. I have other committee assignments. I don't want to track every audit in great detail, but that is an appropriate moment to engage the whole Board of Commissioners.
Well, and I remember being on the committee and with Dave, and we were talking about this, like, well, what if? Because you can keep doing that. I mean, if it doesn't land, I mean, call Lars Larson, call Barney Lurton, and get the media here and say, this is not right, and everybody needs to see it. That could be triggered here. I hope that never happens, but I mean, that's what we're talking about, because if it isn't right, it isn't right.
She wants to, she doesn't, I don't know.
Oh,
Could she give us?
Is there a hand up?
Hand isn't.
Oh,
Thank you for the discussion.
Yeah, I think that obviously acknowledging there's an issue.
Well, but we just shared a lot of information. I think this has moved us forward already.
Well, I do want to commend Elizabeth. We did have a meeting in the sheriff's office. I was actually there. And, we were working together on it. And, okay, so eventually they came back and it was a no, but they were definitely, everything was very cordial. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was outstanding, and I was really, I was happy that it happened, and okay, I can understand.
And at that meeting, they didn't say, no, you can't see it. They said,
No.
we're gonna do research.
Right.
I
So
was there. I was in California.
it was
Sorry.
you and I.
Okay.
You weren't there,
I
Daryl.
was needies.
Yeah.
Invited.
Is there anything in the code that addresses what Elizabeth should do if there's this red flag of a potential scope impairment? And as far as going to legal counsel, going to the Board of Commissioners, is there anything in the code in that regard?
You should ask for legal counsel.
What happens when they don't feel comfortable? Isn't that what you got? Sorry. They did with the sheriff, but the elections, they didn't feel comfortable, or they just didn't have an opinion?
Should that be the board instead, or?
I think that would have been a reasonable time to engage the board. I would have been happy to be involved in those discussions.
But if the code requires her to go to legal counsel, and she goes to the board instead, or before legal has a chance to get back, I don't know if you'd be comfortable doing that.
Then yeah, then the question comes back is, do we have the right code at the moment? Fair question.
Well, thank you for the discussion.
Yeah. Anyone else? Go ahead. Yeah.
I think this is the way.
This is it. It's been, yeah, we're all here.
Okay, we're gonna need it again? Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we should do public health, while our sheriff, since.
Yeah,
they're here,
yeah,
and the
let's-
sheriff's-
That would be polite.
It would be. Thank you guys too. Okay, so let's move on to public health integrated audit. All for good.
There are a few seats here. I don't know if anyone wants to come up. All right.
Go ahead and have a sandwich in the bank.
There's one here.
There's here too.
Oh, Ollie, Dr. Hoppy acknowledged our message last week, today. He goes, thank you.
Okay, well, that's something.
Yes, at least we've got her cell phone now. We're making progress.
Next to you.
She did not know her cell phone number. I know. What was it, 7 minutes?
7 minutes.
Yeah, it was 7.
So this is the follow-up to the public health integrated audit that we put out last December, and we have Holly and Heather here. They introduced themselves earlier. Holly is the Director of Health Services, and Heather is, are you also a director or? Director of
Technically, public health deputy director. of Health
Deputy.
Services.
Yeah, so we did an integrated audit of public health, which is a part of our regular process. We cycle through different departments and do these sort of high-level scans of things that apply across the board, not really related to their specific functions, but just sort of the kind of things that all departments have to deal with. So just some of the background from the audit, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but just one of the contexts of public health, obviously really highly impacted by the pandemic. And so their staffing has been volatile since then. So you can see on this chart, it's showing the number of staff, also the number of sections, like work groups within public health, and how they have changed over time, peaking in 2021 and then coming down a little bit since then. Across the bottom, you can see who was the director at the time. And so you can see when Heather's tenure has been here. This also shows how hiring has changed within the department over time. So you see like a lot more hires than departures going in through the pandemic. And then since then, hiring has gone down. Departures are kind of trailing that increase as well. This was also a chart that was included in the audit, and I think just one of the things we wanted to point out, we were looking at financials, was how much the department relies on grants, and how that's changed since 2020. Grants increasing like $3 million and becoming a much more significant portion of their budget over that time. So we have to admit an error happened in the original audit. And so I submitted an extra report letting everyone know that this had happened. So what happened is when this department was trying to get ready for the audit update, they discovered that we had made a finding based on the percentage of employee evaluations that were completed, and we were relying on data out of our Munis system, our electronic system that had been entered. So the way it works is staff in health department and public health do their evaluations, they're paper formed, people sign off. Then they put them into interoffice mail and they go to human resources, and human resources is supposed to enter the data. And what happened in this case is that there was a temporary employee working in human resources for a period of time who didn't know to enter this data. And so these performance reviews were never input into the system that we relied on for our data. So we are letting you know that was a problem. We are not changing the conclusions of our report based on this, however, and the reason we're not is because the conclusion wasn't just based on the number of evaluations that health department did or public health did. It was a comparison to the county, and we are assuming that human resources didn't just set health departments aside and enter everyone else's. So the comparison overall, we felt like still remained accurate. The other reason we feel like we can still rely on our conclusions is that when we brought these conclusions to the health department, they didn't say, oh, wow, that's really strange because we do an excellent job on that. Most the managers we talked to said, yeah, we need to work on that. That's not something we're doing a great job on. And I think as a learning organization, you'll see they did actually make some improvements in this area. But regardless, we decided to retain the conclusion, but wanted to let you all know about the data error.
Can I say something just to that point? Just because I think it is going to be difficult for the department to know how they've improved on evaluations, because we actually don't agree with how the report was pulled from Munis. We don't agree with the data foundation of this. And so because the data in Munis is complicated and difficult to gather, it's hard for us to know how we're improving on our evaluation status, because the original data we don't believe was accurate. We've had conversations with Elizabeth about this. She feels strongly that the report that she pulled is accurate and can still move forward with her audit findings, but the health department really still doesn't agree.
Yeah, I would add that the reason we were able to find this was because we wanted to go back to see, have we improved? Because that was really important. And we couldn't, there was lots of discrepancies between the reports that we run and the reports that were run for this audit. So that's kind of what started the whole conversation. I will say though that we have made a lot of improvements as far as expectations, coming out of COVID. I think I will say that, yes, we needed to improve there as a piece of this. So there's definitely expectations now of our supervisors and managers for completing evaluations on time. The tricky part I'm running into now, though, is how do I evaluate that?
I do want to speak to the question of whether the reports were reliable, because I think that it's a bit of a mischaracterization. We put certain parameters on the reports that we ran. So the parameters we put on it was January 1 of 24 to the date we ran the report. Any evaluations that were due within that period of time, what percentage were entered into the system? Not on time, but just in the system. We compared the exact same parameters from health countywide. So that's the report that we use. Staff then, when they wanted to follow up on this and they were being proactive and they were trying to see if they had made improvements, they discovered a person whose evaluation was due in December of 23 who wasn't included in our report. Actually was, I think, a person whose evaluation wasn't completed even. And this is causing them to think that our reports are unreliable. The report isn't unreliable, it's just different. We just had different parameters. And so if I can pull the numbers for you if you're interested to compare you to the county as a whole. You probably can't pull it down. But if you wanted to ask me to do that, I could do it, and I could run a similar report to the one I ran for you.
Yeah, I think for us, but I think we have to agree to disagree on this, because we have kind of ad nauseum talked through this, and I think part of our issue is when we find inaccuracies in the report based on the information we have internally that actual evaluations have been completed, that's when we just start to question the data in general.
It was a different
So-
report you were running. It wasn't my report. The report I ran had specific parameters. And you found a data point that lay outside of the parameters of the report that I ran, which doesn't mean my report was inaccurate or not reliable. It just means it was different than the report you ran.
And agreed, the health department would respectfully disagree.
Yeah, I think moving forward, we need to kind of understand the process better and probably improve some processes. And so I do question that report as far as how I'm going to look at whether or not we've improved as or not.
Which is the goal of audits,
Mhm.
to help us do better. We are not denying that we have room for improvement on evaluations, and I think given what both public health in particular was dealing with during COVID, it's not surprising that some evaluations were not the thing that rose to the top during that time. There was a lot going on, so there is room for improvement. We don't disagree on that part. It's really just like, how do we know what we need to improve? How are we going to measure that? And that's going to be difficult based on this audit, which is kind of our hope for any audit we get, is to help us be better going forward. And that's going to be tricky on this one.
I will say though, I appreciate that the actual data, I think, was taken out. Is that accurate as far as percentages? Because that's where we're really also agreeing on the actual percentages. And so just I'll let you all know. So what we've done really internally is I've been working with my managers and supervisors. We put clear expectations that and their performance, they're all to have a complete all staff performance evaluations on time within theirs. And there's been a lot of improvements, we think, in this last
When you
year.
say a lot, do you mean like maybe 95%?
I don't know, because I'm still trying to figure out which report to run. But I will say that there has definitely been a push and an expectation. And I will also add that I think when you met with the managers, their focus has really been more about one-on-ones and having regular one-on-ones with their team and their staff as really important. And we continue to really stress that as well, versus yes, annual performance evaluations are important. And what's really important is making sure that managers and supervisors are checking in regularly with their staff, not just once a year.
Can I just ask, so if I'm tracking correctly, there were evaluations performed, Health Services has records of them, they're not in Munis. And
yes.
so if you pull a Munis data set, then basically evaluations that have been done are not captured.
We took a look at all the ones that were showing based on the report that the auditor ran, and then we compared that to what we have on file, and it wasn't consistent. So I think there's some process improvement here to be had.
I mean, if you can kind of deliver those, records of those evaluations that aren't captured in Munis to the audit office, is it possible to recognize, kind of the limitations of the Munis data set somewhere in the.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, that's something in our memo mentioned that as well, that we really need to take a closer look at that data that we've been relying on for years. Because this is not the first time we've relied on employment data. And Aaron and David used this data going back years. What are we going to do in the future? And that's something we'll have to think about as we kick off the next integrated audit.
It's not a symptom of a larger problem, is it, between Munis and other systems within the county?
I think there are, I can't speak to it as an auditor because I haven't audited it, but it seems like the language is, yes, that's something that could be streamlined. And it actually was on our audit plan to look at the process of how human resources is entering data into Munis. And we took it off, one, because I wasn't aware of the extent of the risks that maybe David was aware of, because I was a new person and I didn't have access to all of the information. And also human resources, had been audited a lot and didn't have a director. And, so we took that plan off of the audit plan. But I think this speaks to a reason why, we need to trust those audit plans even when they're inconvenient. For some reason, I have been disconnected from Zoom. I've been disconnected from everything.
We forgot to pay our bill again? Okay.
My internet is down. So
I would just say on the topic of kind of the broader system and the data within the system, this one has been tricky, I think, in having conversations with Elizabeth. Nick, Eric, and I have had conversations on this topic, as well as with HR and with health services. And I do think it's a couple things that are driving it. One is I think that there's, as Holly put, a difference of opinion between HR staff and health staff. They kind of seem to have a shared understanding of what they believe which report should have been run, and the audit office has a different opinion. I think also there's this issue of a temporary employee potentially having some data entry errors. So I think it's difficult to say what the driver is, but I would kind of echo Holly's sentiment in that there appears to be, I think, kind of multiple factors at play with why outcomes that are existing might be not quite lining up.
It's comfortable to know that this, everyone's aware.
Yeah, we are very aware.
Oh, boy.
all right, so kind of going back to the beginning, we had 6 recommendations in this report. At the 1-year follow-up, 1 recommendation's been resolved, 4 still in process, and 1, the department accepted the risk of not implementing.
Questions?
No, I have more, but my computer is frozen. Okay. So the one that was resolved here was the first one related to the employee evaluations. So we had found that though the county as a whole had low performance in completing evaluations, public health was even lower. So we recommended completing annual performance evaluations and also establishing division-wide expectations for timely completion of evaluations. And when we spoke with staff, they said did have done that. They shared documentation of sharing those expectations for staff, and so we moved to this one to resolve. The next one was related to performance reporting. We found, I think it goes back to that reliance on grant funding, that their performance reporting was kind of all over the place, that they are beholden to a lot of their funders in what they report on, but there wasn't really a clear, like, holistic understanding of what the program does as a whole. So we recommended more of a unified public-facing report aligned with the department's strategic plans that would really give a clearer picture of how the department was performing. And public health is working on that and working, still thinking about how to best share their performance. Another finding was related to cash controls. We found that there were controls in place, but some incomplete procedures weakened some of those controls. So we recommended strengthened controls over mail payments and account receivable oversight, and using receipt books that meet county policy for taking cash receipts. Public Health updated us that they were now using the correct receipt books. They were updating their cash control procedures to include mail payments, and they expect that will be done by February.
Isn't it fascinating though, at our pharmacy, you cannot use cash? You can only pay with a credit card, even if it's like $1.50. They demand that you use a credit card. So.
Staff decision because of concerns about cash.
Right. Oh, I get it. But I mean, for $1.50, please.
Public Health is also planning to update their cash control procedures. One of the things we noted about the department was they had this really very strong comprehensive risk assessment, which we don't see across the county. But the risk assessment didn't include the written cash control procedures as a tool for mitigating risk in this area. We recommended revised procedures that included cash collection practices, workflows, and defined responsibilities, and would also like to see those procedures reflected in their annual risk assessment. And staff said that they were planning to update those collection procedures by February 26th. We also saw some inconsistencies with how gift cards were issued. So the department uses gift cards when working with public for things like, what are you using gift cards for?
We don't use them very often.
I was gonna say, do we even use them anymore?
Probably-
It was during COVID.
Well, yeah, like when you're trying to get consumer feedback and things like that, sometimes gift cards are used as a way to incentivize participation, things like that.
We recommended reinforce accountability for prepaid gift cards through training, monitoring, and revised procedures. Staff audited the gift cards twice this year in January and June, and are planning to update their procedures by June. And the final one is actually also related to human resources and data entry. Issues with human resources. We did a review of information systems and looked to see if there were conflicting roles within Munis where people might have had segregations of duties that were established into Munis. Two people might have the same role, so that they were able to request and approve payments, for example. And we found a few examples of that, which can expose public health to risk of inappropriate payments. I think the reason given was that if someone was promoted or changed roles, human resources wasn't changing their role in the information system. So public health would let human resources know this person has changed their role, but then human resources wasn't updating their role within the financial system. So we recommended, and we asked public health about this, they said, well, it's really resources that's causing the problem. They're responsible for entering the data. And we always try to say, oh, this is your audit, this isn't human resources audit. So what can you do in order to make this process better? And we came up with maybe a tracking system so that instead of just sort of one-off when they notice that this is happening, let human resources know about it, to actually track and talk about how often it's happening and what's really the extent of the problem. Reporting that to human resources, which might inspire them to be better about entering the data. And public health said they would continue to let human resources know when there were problems, but declined to monitor the problem for another department.
Can I expand on that? So I think if you all have the response letter, we put a pretty big response to this in there, and that hasn't changed. Because there's a lot of things we do internally to ensure accuracy and report to HR. So again, I think we didn't feel a whole nother tracking system would make sense at this point.
And Heather, could you clarify for me, and I apologize for not knowing, is it employee data that's sitting in Munis, or is it Tyler data?
My understanding is it's Munis. Cheryl can probably,
Cheryl,
this is a department wide.
Munis side data. Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
So you can see in our response all the things that we're doing already internally.
So, but there's no like a quantification of how often this is happening that then human resources could say like, oh, this is a small problem, this is a big problem, or take it to administration to.
And I think some of the challenges is we're not able to input a lot within Munis on our own. So we're relying on other departments to do that as well.
You know, and adding additional tracking mechanisms and spreadsheets or different processes to an already under-resourced department, I think is an unrealistic expectation. Kind of to some of your point, I mean, it's just, we only have so many staff and we have mandated work to do, and we already have a bazillion tracking requirements for lots of required mandated services that to add an extra one is just what's not feasible.
So we will continue to monitor those in-process recommendations. We'll follow up at the end of each year. And that is the end. So committee has any questions?
I'll just comment that, as an internal service fund and supporting public health through COVID, just for the record, I don't think we can overstate what they achieved. And also the challenge coming out of that downsize from an emergency response. To me, I am curious, I'm not recalling this from the original report, and I'll go back and look, related to the acceptable risk, but I just wanted to say for the public and for the committee's benefit that I don't think we can overstate what they have achieved, and I want to thank them for everything they've done.
And we want to thank Heather for coming back to the county. Immensely thrilled. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate that.
Anyone else? Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Is that an O? No, your necklace.
Oh.
Well, I was like trying to figure out. Is that your duck signal?
Does anyone need a 5-minute break?
That'd be great.
5 break?
Yeah.
Five.
Recreation, yeah.
Okay, let's
Very
reconvene. The next item is the sheriff's office audit and auto cameras report presentation.
All right, so this is the report we released to the audit committee about 2 weeks ago. I'm giving the public these. Just to go over the objectives of the body camera program, discussed by preserving factual representations of interactions, promote deputy safety, record certain activities to supplement deputy reports, enhance the deputy's ability to document and review statements before to improve consistency of internal reporting and also courtroom testimony, to provide visual and audio evidence for investigations, and to provide an impartial measure for self-critique and field evaluation during judgment. Some statistics about the body camera program. It began in May 2021, so I haven't been using them for a super long time. When we took a look at the program this summer, there were 106 cameras issued that had been 18,866 recordings in the first quarter. I should say Q1. Yeah, that's right. In January to March of 2025. 2,191 of those had been used either in a court case or an investigation that had proceeded to trial, or for a civil review. And they had spent about $1 million on the program since. The audit objective was to determine whether the body and audit camera program supported accountability, transparency, and the secure, effective use of reported footage. The sub-objectives were to determine whether deputies were properly reporting and categorizing interactions, whether supervisors were adequately monitoring recordings, whether staff appropriately and promptly responded to public records requests, whether footage was secure, whether it was reliable and available, and whether privacy was protected, and whether staff was sharing reporting about program outcomes with stakeholders. The field work we anticipated doing, so we wanted to do review videos to see if they complied with Sheriff's Office policies and procedures, and had a little preview. discussion, we weren't able to see those videos. We also took that records, we talked with staff in the records division and also people who process public records and looked at data out of the information system that they use to track public records, and also looked at how reporting about body cameras. So we're starting off with our scope impairment. So we had two areas where we couldn't draw conclusions. The first was on reporting. This risk related here was that if cameras were not used properly, it could reduce community trust and also might limit evidence that was needed by prosecutors. The policy, Sheriff's Office policy stipulates how deputies are supposed to activate and deactivate cameras. The Sheriff's Office denied access to the body camera footage, so we could not assess policy. Also, another thing that we wanted to look at in this area was categorization. So when deputies enter, or the footage uploads automatically, but deputies are responsible to go in and mark whether this would be related to a criminal investigation or was just an interaction that doesn't really result in anything. And the reason for marking that is that those sort of those interactions that aren't related to any investigation will be deleted from the system after a shorter period of time. Records that are related to investigations need to be retained longer so that they can be used during the trial. And because we weren't able to see the footage, we weren't able to determine if the records were properly categorized. Our first finding was related to reports. So the Sheriff's Office does work to reports quarterly on the body camera program, including how many interactions have been done. They also do a random sample of one unit each quarter to see if staff are following policy. We use criteria here from the Police Executive Research Forum, which says that statistics, including body camera statistics, should be shared publicly, be shared with the public either through annual reporting or some other method of reporting. We found that their in-house reports were a good first step, but didn't provide for trust and transparency. There were other issues with the reports. They weren't replicable. They were based on point in time draws out of the data system, and they didn't save evidence so that you could go back and make sure that the numbers reporting were backed up by evidence. They weren't evaluative. They didn't really speak to areas where the office could improve, and they weren't public. And then they also didn't identify a way for understanding when cameras should have been turned on but were not. So they didn't do something, which is something we had intended to do, which would be take a whole sample of all of dispatches and then look to see if there was footage related to each of the dispatch events that we would think should have a camera, a recording associated with it. The office had mixed responses based on this finding. They agreed to save point in time reports to provide evidence that supported the numbers that they were reporting in their quarterly reports. They declined to make their reports public. They said that this wasn't required by their accreditation standards, so they weren't going to do it. I think sometimes we go above and beyond what our baseline standards are in the interest of promoting transparency with the public, but they didn't want to do that. And then they also agreed to include a review of dispatch calls into their analysis in the future. Another thing that we saw was that supervisors were not consistently reviewing the footage of sergeants. Without supervision, deputies could be more likely to not record footage or categorize it properly. Sheriff's Office policy requires each sergeant to review 2 randomly selected videos from each of their direct reports each quarter. We looked at the data system to see who was accessing records. Of the 62 deputies who had uploaded footage during that quarter, 26 of them had fewer than 2 reviews. So we talked with them about having some way to document reviews, such as a log or some other way to do it would increase confidence that reviews were taking place according to policy. And the Sheriff's Office agreed with that. The next section we looked at was public records requests. This is an area where there's a lot of interaction with the public. So there's a lot of reasons why the public might be interested in accessing footage that they could be involved in. Sheriff's Office policies and state law require great guidelines for how public records, including body camera footage, should be provided, including how the office should respond, in what cases it should and should not provide records, and how to set fees for charging those records. There were 2 things. So ultimately, I will say here that the office complied with the policy, and so we didn't see a problem with how they were providing body camera footage to the public. But one issue was that we didn't have full confidence that all of the requests were in the database that the Sheriff's Office was providing, because this was based on an online portal where people can submit requests online, but requests that come through in other ways aren't tracked through this portal, and there's no single document in place where these requests are filed or kept track of. So we recommended a better information system to track all requests, not just requests that came through the portal. The other issue that we saw here was that actually no footage was provided to the public during this time. And the reason for that is that state law requires redactions of any video provided to the public, and it's very expensive. And so I think the cheapest one was, I think the person quoted $82 for providing the information, but it went up to over $1,000. And so the cost is a big barrier. It is and potentially a full barrier for the public to access this data, which shows there's it is noteworthy in a program that's really designed to provide more transparency in interactions, law enforcement interactions, but that is the policy. So the Sheriff's Office agreed to continue with their plans to implement new tracking software for public health. And then the final finding was related to information system security controls. Information system security controls are essential for ensuring that data is protected, and also that it's reliable and available when people need it. The federal government sends requirements for criminal justice information systems for controlling criminal justice information, like the information on body cameras, identifying certain controls that should be in place. We've based on interviews with staff and review procedures, we found that controls were falling short in areas like password requirements, lockout timing, and account setup. We also noticed that user roles had been established, but we've been monitoring to know whether those roles were being properly implemented. Noted that there's no policies and procedures specific to the body camera information system that could have addressed some of these areas. It's a cause. And then our recommendations were to develop policies and procedures specific to the camera footage information system, and also to develop and use reports that would allow for user role monitoring and also access monitoring. And the sheriff's office agreed with those recommendations. And that's it. So if we have any questions, I'm sorry, the sheriff's office.
Just curious, like you, quarter one number, 18,000 recordings, was that through quarter one, or was that all up to that date?
Just up to just those 3 months.
It seems strange timing wise that we would be able to measure the amount of footage in first quarter and the amount actually used as evidence in a trial that second quarter, given how long it takes to get to trial.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Good question.
Curious about the redaction. What would be redacted under those fees that you mentioned?
So the state law says that any faces need to be redacted. So that would include law enforcement officers and members of the public.
Oh,
Someone
that's
has to go in and blur the.
frame by frame.
All right.
That's
License plates, maybe.
a lot. But that's
And
probably
even
the
if it's-
high
even
rate
if
of
it's
fee.
your own, so.
Use your own,
Yeah.
oh, so that's probably a lot of what the fee is. That's frame by frame.
Good report, good responses from the sheriffs.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything from the world of Zoom? Okay, we'll move on to in process and upcoming.
So we only have one audit in process, which is the house assist audit, and so we'll share the objective with all of you. So the objective for that audit is to determine whether the county used best practices to effectively engage an internal department, grant, and coordinated efforts to address houselessness. So what this will be looking at is sort of a survey level view of the county's current departmental programs. So for example, health services has a homeless outreach team that's focused on behavioral health vision. Property management has a team that mitigates impacts where people are camping on county land. So looking at these kinds of programs, sorry. Then looking at any grants that have been provided to service providers. So this would be, most of these grants in the past have been related to the ARPA funds, but just to sort of look at the county's process for giving grants out. And then also looking at coordinated efforts with other regional partners, other cities, and then regional, like the COIC, and also service providers to address houselessness.
You started work on it yet, or is it just?
I've done the preliminary sort of background work research. Still working to reach out with departments. I have a meeting with Holly very soon to go through the subjective with her. And then probably in January, I'll start reaching out to service providers. And I also want to do a survey of counties across the state to find out more about how they're addressing houselessness.
Survey level view.
Mm-hmm.
What's that mean?
That means I'm not going to go very deep. And so I really am not going to go very deep into sort of the host team and find out exactly, you know, are they following their procedures? Are they achieving their objectives? It'll be more how they're set up. How do they determine their budget requests? How do they do their strategic planning? what do they see as their sort of high level process?
I did want to mention, I met with Elizabeth a week or two ago, and she shared the audit objective, and I provided her some feedback. I told her I'd put it in writing. I still need to do that, but I wanted to just mention the feedback that I provided to her, and again, I'll put it in writing and share it with the audit committee and the commissioners. My feedback was that the audit objective was too broad. When it talks about, determine whether the county used best practices to effectively engage in internal department grant and coordinated efforts to address homelessness. Address homelessness is really the topic. That's a pretty broad topic. I had some concerns because the county doesn't have a homeless program. We don't have a housing department. So when I looked at that objective, I didn't know what it meant. So then when I looked at, as part of our discussion, she provided the Yellow Book values. And, it talks about compliance, looking at government programs and whether or not they're achieving their objectives. Also, whether or not government services are provided effectively, efficiently, ethically. And so when you apply those to address homelessness, I didn't know how you would do that. So I had concerns about how the Yellow Book values would be applied to this audit. So then I looked at, well, what are the county's programs? And really, it's the board that decides the policy for the county, and the county's goals and objectives, that's what should be audited. If you look at the goals and objectives and things about housing or homelessness, you could look at those and see how those are being implemented. So that was one recommendation I had for her. I was also a little bit concerned that best practices is pretty subjective. I think it'd be really helpful to see what other counties are doing. But my concern was, then we have a county document that people are saying, oh, the county's not following best practices because X county is running shelters, and how come the county isn't doing best practices? So I was a little bit concerned that best practices could lead to expectations from others. I also felt that I was a little bit concerned with the broad nature of the audit objective that may end up getting into board policy decisions. And my understanding is that's not the purpose of an audit, is to get into board policy decisions, but with such a broad objective, that's what we may end up with. And then my last comment was the audit criteria, which any audit says, here's the objective, we're going to compare it against the audit criteria. It's listed as government performance lab, active contract management, government accounting office, governing across the divide. And so I didn't know what that meant. And when I talked to Elizabeth, she said, well, it hasn't been firmed up yet, which is understandable.
So those are I can send you those reports.
Okay. So I would want to have it. She asked for input and feedback. And so I want to be able to see what the audit criteria is to give my feedback. Otherwise, we end up at the end of the report, and then there might be disagreement about the audit criteria. So I wanted to see the audit criteria on the front end.
So I can send you those two reports. When we're talking about best practices, what I was thinking is I'll be using the survey results. So benchmarking the county's programs for homelessness against the survey results from other counties.
Yeah. So I'll follow it up. I told her I'd follow it up with written communication, and I'll copy the audit committee. But in general, the audit is how is the county doing addressing homelessness? And I liken it to, how's the county doing with addressing quality of life? To me, it's too broad, but that's just it's not my decision. That was just my feedback to Elizabeth.
I wanted to share, I went and looked at some of the other audits that I used as background research and what their audit objectives were. Because I think when Eric and I talked, I said, like, I'm pretty comfortable that this is a reasonable audit objective. And this is what audit objectives often look like. So there's one out of Denver, which says their objective is to determine the type and level of funding and assess the effectiveness of Denver's efforts to collaborate and coordinate with other groups to address homelessness. There's one from San Diego. The objective was to determine whether they procure homeless service contracts according to leading practices.
Do those agencies have housing and homeless departments?
I think the different, the risk is that we have houses. So I don't know that having a department necessarily is a requirement to assess the risk.
But if they have a department, if they have a program, then there's like a whole set of, goals, objectives, plans, hopefully associated with that. I mean, I don't think that you can say that we have a plan that we're operating.
And I think
under.
that's one of the problems is that we don't have a plan.
Yeah, I
We
would
come
agree.
out in an audit.
I would agree that that's a problem, but whether identifying that in an audit is going to change the fact that we don't have a plan is another question. But I also just want to say, kind of getting to this idea of best management practices or comparison to other counties. This is homelessness response. After trying to learn a lot about what other communities are doing, what's been effective in other places. This is a homelessness response is way more of an art than a science. And there's, Holly's folks, they understand how to, that there is a lot of science around, how do you help someone recover from addiction, right? But homelessness response, it really is way more art than science. There's things that work in some places that don't work in other places. I mean, one of the things that we've invested in Central Oregon is an approach called safe parking, which has failed colossally in basically most other parts of Oregon, but is incredibly successful here. So, like, I don't know how you evaluate the best practices around that. I mean, because we do it better than everybody else. And if you just look at what everyone else is doing, you'd say, oh, you shouldn't do safe parking. But we should, because it's one of the best pathways out of homelessness that we have.
Done the audit yet, so I can't really speak to, how I will use that criteria or how I would frame a report. I'm just at the very beginning stages now.
I think for the health department, the inclusion of the host team, which is a very small treatment providing team. We're not a solving homelessness team. We don't have the resources or the even authority to do anything related to that. We are a treatment provider. So I think as long as, and again, I don't know how this all is going to play out. We haven't met. So
And I think, but I think this is a good example of, because the expectation in the community, and it's not, like, I've had very clear conversations with your staff, like, we are treatment providers. The expectations amongst our community partners and service providers is that this is the county's program to provide services to people in the field. And so there is a disconnect there that I think the audit can shed light on, really clarifying what is the county's role, what is the county's commitment. Because in my conversations, what's really become clear to me is that people don't understand what the county's role is.
And there is an agreement. I mean, among the three commissioners, there's not agreement about what our role is and what effective strategies are going to be, and what effective investments are going to be. I mean, there's a great policy disagreement. So, I mean, there could be value in looking at, well, how do basically how do other counties see their role and what are they doing, and just kind of surveying, how do we see it and what is, what are we doing? But at the point where you try to evaluate whether we're compliant, whether this is best practice or not best practice. I think you're going to run into some real challenges with that like being able to do that effectively. So, I mean,
I think that what I see is the biggest risk here is the clarity and that people not really understanding the county's role. And maybe there's disagreement among the commissioners. Maybe some want to do more in this area or some want to do more in that area.
I would say, please do the Veterans Village, because that we've taken Clackamas's program and I think we've taken it to a higher level, and it's incredibly successful. And, you know, and it's nice to know there's something really working.
And what are those things? So what
Right.
are the things we do? And what are the things we're not doing now? And being just really clear about the difference between those two things.
I started out when I first talked to Elizabeth a couple months ago, and I half jokingly but half serious said, well, how about the audit tell us what the county's role with homelessness is? And it's coming up, and I would describe it as host. We'll tell you exactly what host does, and that's one thing we do. We provide behavioral health treatment and substance use disorder treatment to people who are homeless. You know, property management has unsanctioned camping, and so that's not really a program. That's just addressing an issue. And then you go to the county's goals and objectives, which is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. There you go. So I'm not sure why, but that's just my input.
I just have a question related to gauging the public's expectations or opinions. Do you have a way in mind to do that in kind of a statistically verifiable way, or how to gather that information so that it's reflective of a cross section of the community?
No, I wasn't going to survey the public. I also am not going to do any surveying or gathering information from people who are houseless. And the reason for that is I think those people get tasked a lot to give their opinions, and sometimes feel like we keep telling you what we need, but we never see results from that. So I have access to reports already that other people have done with that public information. I think when I'm going to engage with the community is through service providers, and I haven't really decided how I'll select those, and it probably won't be like a statistically representative sample. It'll probably be more qualitative based on who are the largest providers and such. I'll try to do my best to get a representative sample though.
Well, I would like to step back from the audit itself and just comment that I appreciate the fact that our auditor and our administrator are conferring on the scope, and you know, I appreciate the tenor and constructive nature of that as well.
So, yeah, and I agree. And so going back to, you know, earlier conversations we had about setting the work plan and the broadness of the subject when we set the work plan, you know, does that come back to the audit committee responsibility and duties as far as narrowing this in the beginning? And so Elizabeth isn't set up, I mean, kind of doesn't have direction, but also has the independence to go the direction she wants. So I don't know if there's more of a balance as a committee, because we obviously set this houselessness before we had any conversations today or had more discussions on that, of how to set a work plan that's more achievable, realistic, or all those things.
I feel pretty comfortable with this audit objective. I think it lines up with other audits that I've seen done. I have a plan in mind. You know, I appreciate this opportunity to have conversations, but I guess I hope that this doesn't become an opportunity to I hope this doesn't become an opportunity to stop an audit before it starts. That I think we have a lot of chance to make a really good impact here and give members of Deschutes County, community members of Deschutes County, some really good information that they don't actually have access to right now.
just generally speaking, at this stage in an audit where we have objectives that have been set forth, what level of adjustment to those based on feedback that you receive might be expected, or might generally, just maybe not specific to this audit, but just audits generally at this stage when you receive feedback? Is there a summary of how objectives might be adjusted based on feedback?
Sure. If there's a reason to adjust objectives, they'll be documented in the file shared with the auditees. I probably wouldn't share it with the audit committee because we don't meet frequently enough, but I would definitely share it with management. And then, yeah, and they can change, yes.
So you need to, I mean, some of this, there's some parts that we won't know and you have to get in and meet with others, because you could meet and say, well, we have a best practice that we align to, and you would add that in. And it is a process, and there's knowledge that Elizabeth gained, and she then will set her audit plan of how she's gonna test. So yeah, objectives could change depending on the information she gets. It'd be interesting. We might be doing more than other counties, or there might be some where like that's where that should be city because they get funding for it. Be interesting to see what you find in that benchmarking. It could go either way, but I know you need to get in there a little bit before you can even further refine what you're going to look at.
Eric, what are some of the commissioners' objectives that this audit itself would align with? Were there any specific?
Yeah, there's one that addresses kind of housing and housing affordability. And then I think there's 3 objectives under that. And that's something that, it's was approved by the Board of County Commissioners. And so to me, that's the policy body. That's what they said we're going to work on. And that's reported on as the quarterly updates. So,
You want me
oh yeah.
So there's 3. The overarching goal is housing stability and supply, support actions to increase housing production and achieve stability. And then the objectives underneath that goal are expand opportunities for residential development on appropriate county-owned properties, support actions to increase housing supply, and collaborate with partner organizations to provide an adequate supply of short-term and permanent housing and services to address housing insecurity.
It's concrete, measurable.
So that was one of my recommendations, is to apply the Yellow Book values against those, because those are the programs and policies of Deschutes County as stated by our county commissioners.
But I think we also have a lot of other programs that touch on topic, and I think HOST is one of them. I think the services provided by property management is also not covered within those goals. And then we also have a camping ordinance that has been passed by the Board of County Commissioners that we don't really have any way of enforcing, or no one's really been tasked with enforcing that. So I don't think, I think there's a lot more going on than is just encompassed within those goals.
Then maybe it's compliance with the camping ordinance. I mean, I would like to see my input is more specific, because address homelessness that's not the county. The county hasn't said we're gonna. I mean, that's not a policy of the board or the county. But that's just my input.
There is, I mean, the objectives that Whitney just shared with you, some of those are housing production related. And so far I haven't heard anything in the description of what you're going to be looking at that actually looks at the ways that the county helps to produce housing and affordable housing. So that could be a whole other arena that you add to this. But in some ways that makes this even broader and more unwieldy. Because one of the there's plenty of research said that helps us understand that in communities with ample supplies of affordable housing, you just have less homelessness. I mean, people want to kind of grab onto near-term and individualized and personal issues like someone's struggling with addiction, But in communities where there's more abundant affordable housing, there is less homelessness. So I mean, that's one of the only things that there's real, data correlations demonstrating. And so, if the, if that leads you to the conclusion that affordable housing supply is the most effective thing that we can do to reduce homelessness, then you need to be asking, what is the county doing to produce affordable housing?
I think I'm interested to hear more about that, and we can talk, because when I've done my survey review of what the county's worked on, that touches houselessness, it's really the host team and some housing provided through the behavioral health services, property management, management of the safe park or the TSSA. Kind of questions about the sheriff's office and some house, there's some role that they play tangentially, although in discussions with them, they really insist, like, we just respond to calls for service, and we respond to all calls for service the same way. Code enforcement, who could potentially be involved in this camping ordinance, which we have on the books, but other cities are in the county are enforcing their camping ordinances. And then I think there's been some land donations for housing and grant programs to develop housing. So I do want to look at those grant programs.
And tax deferrals and tax credits.
And so maybe,
tax exemptions.
maybe we can talk more about what areas we can scope in that. But I'm really focused on what the county's doing. So that first area is about what the county's doing. Second area is about grants and giving money to service providers, and whether we're setting up expectations for what we want to see from the money we give to service providers. And then finally, how we are working with our partners. And then are we giving our partners the information they need about what we can do in order to be successful and have a successful partnership.
I just hope we're not setting up the behavioral health department, though, because as the behavioral health department's sole goal is to provide behavioral health treatment to all people. This happens to be a specialty team that focuses on individuals with primarily behavioral health conditions that happen to also be houseless. So we're not, like, when you think about trying to, like, what is the county doing to solve homelessness or address homelessness? Like, that's not what the host team is not trying to address homelessness. We're trying to address behavioral health needs for the houseless population.
But are
So-
the substance use disorder part of that too?
Yeah, I mean, so behavioral health,
I
encompasses
appreciate that.
substance use and mental health, and that's our focus. So we're not about, like, trying to get,
Sympathetic,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. That's just the only, because I don't want too much emphasis being placed on our role in the resolution of houselessness for our community.
And I think that's part of, clarifying what those coordinated efforts are.
Yeah.
That the county doesn't, as far as I know, and I'm just starting out this audit, it doesn't appear to me that the county does have any role to play in providing those services to people who generally who are out there experiencing homelessness. And I think it's complicated because we do have a partnership with Bend, and I think Bend is funding some, but these are sort of the things I'm going to explore or hoping to explore.
But I mean, if you look at the structure and nature of cities and counties, cities are not health and human services organizations, counties are. So I mean, if you look broadly enough, you will find counties that, have a much more significant health and human services responses to homelessness than Deschutes County. That doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean that that's best practice, because I mean, we need to be working at homelessness in ways that are that fit within a landscape of overall efforts and are coordinated with those efforts. and that are achievable with the, you know, the policies and the resources that we've allocated, you know, to the effort. So it's, yeah. So yeah, there very well may be cities that are doing more than we are, but it's their job is, you know, their job is housing production. Our job is health and human services.
So you could run into somebody, compare us to something great. They have totally different.
Sure, and as I do the work, I will evaluate those issues and grapple with them. Because I don't have a conclusion for you now. I'm just at the very beginning, sharing this with you at the beginning. That's it for that report. I included my status, link to the status report, which just talks about housing and hours. If you want to review that, link in the agenda. And another thing I wanted to mention now is that the performance auditor that I hired was resigned from the position. She's having trouble finding housing here, and so that position is still open, is now open. I'm anticipating posting that in January.
That works.
Oh,
Administrative updates, Eric, Whitney.
yes, probably the two main ones are our vacant department head positions. With Fair and Expo Center, we did a recruitment, had a strong pool of candidates, did in-person interviews, had a job offer. The person declined more for personal reasons and relocation reasons. So we will put together a recruitment schedule to go back out. I will probably open it next week, do interviews at the end of February, and try again. With our solid waste department, Tim Brunel announced his upcoming retirement. So the recruitment is currently open. I forget the timeline of that, but those are the two main updates.
A Zillow link to the.
What's that?
Add a Zillow link to the.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That pain. Thank you. I have a little twinge of guilt.
It's just little.
It's very